You could picture the nightmarish scenario of an innocent, sane young man being judged guilty of a brutal murder, imprisoned in an asylum for his 20s, and then discreetly released with the instruction never to discuss the case. Ian Hay Gordon, nevertheless, found it difficult to accept that the surreal ordeal that had consumed most of his adult life was now over 50 years later. Sir Robert Carswell, the Lord Chief Justice of Northern Ireland, took just over an hour to read the decision. But it was the verdict that the 68-year-old had been waiting to hear for 48 years. Not guilty of the infamous crime that shook 1950s Ulster. The court overturned his conviction for the crazed stabbing of Patricia Curran, 19, a judge's daughter, after ruling that the forced confession that led to his conviction was invalid. Patricia took the bus that evening and then decided to walk home. Her mother informed Desmond, her brother, that she was not yet home when she did not arrive, as expected. When Desmond went looking for her, he discovered her on the estate. The young woman's body was found on the grounds of her family's beautiful estate in White Abbey, County Antrim, on a night in November 1952. The family loaded her rigor mortis strewn body into a car and drove to a nearby doctor, even though medical professionals eventually determined that she had been dead for more than 4 hours. She had 37 stab wounds and must have fought her killer, who would have been covered in blood, even though her possessions were neatly stacked a few yards from her body. Later, contradictory information concerning Mr. Hay Gordon's whereabouts added to the confusion. There were also additional peculiar characteristics. Even though it had rained that evening, her clothing was very dry. Additionally, there was little to no blood at the scene, despite the attack's frenetic character. Moreover, it did not stop there. The judge forbade the Royal Ulster Constabulary from speaking with his family for 4 days. It took a week before the police were permitted to enter the family's home. When they did, they saw that Patricia's bedroom had recently been redecorated. Patricia's father, Lancelot Curran, was a prominent judge, a former Stormont Attorney General, and a local Unionist member of Parliament. He belonged to Northern Ireland's ruling class. When Patricia took a year off between high school and starting Queen's University, where she was a first-year student at the time of her death, there were heated arguments between her and her mother Doris about her independent daughter's unconventional lifestyle, particularly her relationships with older men. Her sibling, Desmond, belonged to a militant religious organization called Moral Rearmament, and he made an effort to enlist 20-year-old aircraft technician Ian Hay Gordon, whom he had met at the nearby Presbyterian church, into the group. Mr. Hay Gordon, who was stationed at a base close to the Curran residence and had only occasionally interacted with the family, adamantly denies ever being near the home the night of the murder. But he was detained and charged in January, 2 months later. He broke down after 2 days of intense questioning, which he now describes as a game of charades, in which detectives pushed him to agree to particular situations out of fear that the police would discover his prior gay experimentation at a time when homosexuality was still illegal and widely regarded as a mortal sin. He was terrified of his mother finding out. He stated that he would have done anything to end the questioning. Later, psychologists called it a form of brainwashing. He consequently signed a confession without the assistance of a lawyer, and following the trial, he was committed for 7.5 years in Hollywell Mental Institution. After being set free in 1960, he led a quiet, admirable life in Glasgow, where few people knew of his past, but he was still anxious to cleanse his reputation. In 1993, the court case began, and 7 years later, he won. Ian Hay Gordon died in 2012 as an innocent man, but a gravely wronged one. No one will ever really know who killed Patricia Curran. Journalist John Linklater, who has long supported Hay Gordon, has hinted in public lectures that he suspects her mother, but there is no way to verify this with certainty. The tragedy never left the Curran family, even though Lancelot received a knighthood in 1964. Another well-known Queen's Counsel, Richard Ferguson, characterized him as a chilly, distant man who was in an immense amount of pain. Doris Curran was also left broken-hearted after her daughter passed away. She died in 1972. And her husband passed in 1984. 5 years after his sister's murder, Desmond made a remarkable conversion to Catholicism, and his Orange Man father disobeyed the obedient order to attend his ordination as a priest in Rome in 1964. In his 70s, he served as a pastor in a black township outside of Cape Town, South Africa, where his congregation referred to him as the Lamp. He resided in a small prefabricated hut with no power. Ian received the justice he desired and achieved his wish. Perhaps Patricia will get her turn soon. This was a request from one of you, sweet ones. Tell me your thoughts below. Who do you think killed Patricia?